everyone, and welcome to Hort-Talk, an HTA podcast. This is episode 17, where we are celebrating 125 years of UK environmental horticulture. I'm Alex Jenkins, your host, and today I'm joined by some very special guests who I'm going to ask to introduce themselves.
Good morning. I'm Alan Sargent, and I've been involved in horticulture since 1968. Right from day one, I actually joined the HTA in 1968. So I'm delighted to be and honoured to be on this particular programme, now celebrating, you say, well, in my case, 56 years of the HTA. In your case, a darn sight longer.
So I'm Stan Green. I've got a horticultural wholesale business. I've got a garden centre and a florist, so I'm a glutton for punishment. When I first came in as a relative youngster into the industry, I was mentored by a couple of very good friends, still very good friends, and they said, look, there's no point in just getting your head down and getting on with it. Get involved in the industry. And that was my first taste of the Horticultural Trade Association. So yeah.
So my name's Tim Smith. I'm the operations director for David Austin Roses. I've had various hats over the years there, but today I look after the growing, the fulfillment and the product related areas of the business. So the breeding, the garden and the trials work that we do.
I'm Ruth Gowdy and I'm really honoured to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me because I'm a newbie. My husband and I set up a nursery from scratch in 2000. We didn't join the HTA until about 8 years later, and our rep came round and visited, and we couldn't believe that we would be asked to be in the HTA. He said, why don't you join? It'd be really good for you. And thank goodness we did. And we've grown beyond what we ever imagined because of that.
Thank you all very much, and thank you for agreeing to be part of this episode today. So, as we've already said, this is a celebration of an anniversary for the HTA. In 1899, we saw the founding of the Horticultural Trades Association of Great Britain and Ireland in response to a call for a formation of League of Seedsmen. But this isn't just about the HTA today. We're about celebrating horticulture, environmental horticulture over the last 25 years. And that's not necessarily been a straightforward and easy journey the whole way. So I'm just going to ask you to reflect a little bit on your journeys, which are all very varied and different. And if you can just tell me maybe some of the challenges that you faced or some of the time periods which have stood out to you that may have come with a particular issue and what it is you found most challenging.
Well, I found the talking about the niche that landscaping had in the horticultural industry. We were very much a new industry. We weren't, because looking back over the many years, of course, building of gardens has been a major thing. I think between the wars probably reduced a bit, but certainly when I started out in the 60s, it was there were new people coming on the block, people like John Brooks and so on. There was no room for garden designers in the RHS. There wasn't an RHS garden design tent, and landscaping was very much a poor relation. So in 1982, the British Association of Landscape Industries was formed. Sorry, 1972, the BALI was formed, British Association of Landscape Industries, and the landscapers had a common voice. Now I joined the BALI in 1978. Because that seemed to be the right thing for me to do, and my business then grew and grew and grew. But BALI it was originally set up for domestic landscapers, and the larger it got, the more commercial it got. And so I've always been a person who, if I feel something's not right, I don't sit back and do nothing. I get on and do something about it. So in 1995, I left BALI and founded the Association of Professional Landscapers, known as the APL. They are now very much part of the HTA, and I think we're the second largest grouping in the HTA, which is absolutely astonishing. Now, the first 3 years of having founded the APL were very difficult, because trying to run a business and run this organisation, all with volunteers, it became quite a big beast. And very, very fortuitously, David Gwyder of the HTA stepped in and offered to take over the administration of the APL, and of course we've never looked back since then. So it's been a journey really of basically the HTA originally had all the barley members. But barley members left the HTA to form barley, and then the APL left barley to form the APL, and then put the landscapers back into the HTA. So it wasn't ever meant to be that way around, but just a natural symbiotic thing. And I think that the challenges that stand out for that were mitigated by the strength of feeling and passion within the industry by individual companies and individuals to actually make it all happen. And that, to me, has been the story of my life, as it were. If I want something to happen, I make it happen by working with the right people. And it's not manipulation at all, and it just happened to meet the right people at the right time. In this particular case, it was the HTA in 1995.
Perhaps if I could pick up from there, Alan, and talk about the challenges that we face, but do it backsides forwards, maybe reflecting on where we are and where we've come from. Because at the moment, I'm going around talking to college students in particular. I'll talk to anybody who listens, really, but and try and enthuse about, well, not try and enthuse, I am enthusiastic about horticulture. Just get out and get to schools, get to anybody, as I said, that would listen. I'm trying to push it a little bit, not just preaching to the converted, because there's a lot going on at the moment with some of the bigger agendas, dare I say, the sustainability agenda, the net zero, the climate change mitigation. There's things that government are engaging with that are happening, and schools, local authorities are starting to get it, for the want of a better phrase, and we really just need to start that conversation so we get more traction, because the biggest challenge, and there's an irony here, is that I don't think enough people take us seriously. And now by that I mean within education, how often do we hear get a proper job, son? Or they have an image, we have an image issue with regards to the careers, the breadth of careers that are phenomenal with environmental horticulture at your back. But we just don't get that message over. It is a perception, it's not a reality. I quite often reflect with the kids, or I don't because they never see it, but there was a television advertising slot going back a few years now about Spain. Come to Spain, and they said, so you think you know Spain? And they have pictures of deck chairs and towels, and people the 2 square inches of beach to lie on. And then they said, but think again. And then they had the heritage aspects, the countryside aspects that you perhaps wouldn't associate that. I think we're at that stage now with horticulture. There is so much more that we can offer. I start to hyperventilate when I talk to students, because I think we have an opportunity like no other that I've seen in the last 40 years with these agendas. The kids kind of get it. The authorities are trying to work with that, and the industries are starting to react. So challenges, yes. It was really interesting, and I'll finish on this point, that I used to represent Scotland on the HTA Council. And it was pointed out to me, and I read a minute saying that horticulture has a real image problem, that we really need to engage with schools in a different way. And everybody was nodding and agreeing and wondering where this minute was from. It was a minute taken from a council meeting from the 1960s, early 1960s. So in that respect, the frustration was that nothing had changed. I get the feeling that things are changing. So hopefully we can grasp that and move forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And it's something that we've discovered in our nursery when we're recruiting.
Yeah.
So we will have an awful lot of people. I hesitate. I'm an older lady, and so if I say middle-aged, my age and upwards, I think is a good kind of way of saying it. But we'll have a lot of older ladies that have changed careers and want to come into it, or gentlemen that apply and say, well, I've had a hard job all my life and now I'd like to come and work in a garden centre. And I don't ever quite know what to say, because this is hard work,
Yeah,
but
very
it's
hard work.
rewarding work. And what we really need is enthusiastic and intelligent people in this business. And I have learned so much, and I have met so many amazing people who are absolutely inspiring. And it just seems a terrible shame that a lot of youngsters now are almost on a one-way street into degrees, and horticultural degrees are fantastic too, but we have just employed a young lady in our farm shop who had done 1 year at A levels, is clearly very intelligent, but it just didn't suit her. And actually, she's come to us and she's thoroughly enjoying being in a different kind of environment and soaking everything up. And we've had an apprentice, well, we've had two now, and that was really because we needed youngsters who are really keen and enthusiastic and happy to work full time and able to work full time, but they didn't necessarily have the knowledge. They hadn't been given that knowledge in their school settings at all. And by doing an apprenticeship, it made such a difference. So we're so proud of them. I feel like a work mum, because you watch them grow. You really do.
Yeah.
They come to you and they're quiet and shy, and one of them, he's learned every single plant on the place in the time. It's taken me years to assimilate the amount of information that he has learned. And so this is exactly what we need, and that's why it's so wonderful to have the Young People in Horticulture Association, which is formed as well, and so wonderful that they are all starting to network. And again, the two of the young people at our nursery joined that, and I think that made such a difference because they didn't feel so isolated. And both of them said, "Oh, I can't talk to other people my age about this." And isn't that a shame? Dreadful shame, because it's great fun. We all know that.
Absolutely.
But we have had other challenges. There have been other things. And again, the HTA have always been really amazing, and they're only ever a phone call away.
We had a similar one to Ruth. I'd pick up COVID probably as one of ours, and sort of COVID, you can split into pre-COVID, which was quite stable, COVID, and all that uncertainty, whether it be on people, keeping people alive, fear of, those basics, through to ridiculously long days. And then post-COVID, for us, really, what is post-COVID? How much of that client base that you saw in COVID will you see post-COVID, and what will the world look like post-COVID, and how will it settle down? And that's sort of one of the challenges that we see at the moment. And I think also for us, touching upon the people side, we still field grow. And I think Alan mentioned about his old days of field open growing crops and that. And the rose industry is still very much field based. And, if I take the last 3 years, we've had 2 crazily dry years, and 1 year, literally for 12 months, it has not stopped raining. And for us, the massive challenge there is you can't get on the field, you can't do things at the right time. With the removal of chemicals, pre-emergence, and all that, and you can only do things at a certain time in the field, so you're forced to do it. Your yields start to drop. Labour has to be a way of keeping fields clean in the absence of chemical. And when we talk about careers for people, sometimes that's a hard thing because we want them to be enthused and excited, but at some point you might be on the end of a hoe. And in this day of virtualism and online, getting the young to actually meet that physicality and to see that not as a derogatory role or job, but a task that's needed. So that's a big challenge that I think we face, certainly on that side.
Well, thank you all. I think it's really interesting that you actually, education came up as one of the biggest issues there straight away, as well as, the ones what you'd expect, like COVID and obviously seasonal and weather changes as well. But now we've had a look at some of those struggles. Can we talk about maybe some of the things that have happened that you're most proud of, some of the biggest achievements?
Well, I've always been very, very involved and interested in training. I've run since about 1995, so about 30 years. That's a long time, 30 years. I've done a whole series of road shows on an annual basis, from waterscaping to landscaping. I'm currently in the middle of a 7-date tour in around England on paving and associated works. My biggest achievement, as it were, as far as I'm concerned, is setting up the landscape library, which I did in 2020. That is a major resource for the garden industry, landscape, and right across the board, head gardeners and landscapers, garden designers, maintenance contractors, and so on. We are actually in partnership with the HTA as the landscape library, and this is just growing from strength to strength. And I've got more and more training involved now. I'm coming up 77, and I've still got years ahead of me planned with training and seminars and workshops and so on. I think this is the vital thing, certainly for the landscape industry. We've been very, very fortunate. I believe in the 1980s and 1990s, we had some extremely good colleges. Merriswood and Pershore stand out to my mind for producing landscape students. And they, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. They were regularly winning gold medals at Chelsea. In fact, Merriswood won Best in Show in 1988 and 1990. Pershore took the Best in Show with a thing called the Greening of Industry. That seems a long time ago now. But then suddenly it all sort of fell off, and I think there's lots of reasons for it, and a lot of it was to do with diversification and colleges having to find funds elsewhere. But I think now what's really important is the last 2 or 3 years, we've now got 2 new academies set up in the UK, with the Landscape Academy up in Chester, and Task in Pershore. Malvern is a wonderful organisations. I once wrote an article. I do a lot of writing. I'm author of quite a few books, and I wrote an article once called "Where Have All the Heroes Gone?" And I never published it because it seemed to be not quite the right time. But I was thinking back of those heroes they were heroes in the 90s and the 80s, where certain people at certain colleges were like the Pied Piper of Hamelin. The students would follow them to the end of the earth, and it's a strange thing to see, but a wonderful thing to see. The students really doted on their lecturers, and it was wonderful to see that. And then it all somehow disappeared. And so my article, "Where Have All the Heroes Gone?" I think I'm going to rewrite that now, because we've got a few more heroes coming on the scene now. And with these academies, they're doing a wonderful job. And so with the Landscape Library, as an online resource, is a big resource with quite a few very, very good writers writing for it, including some HTA members. And so I'm looking forward to that very much. We became partners with the HTA a couple of years ago, worked very strongly, very closely together with the HTA and the APL. So training has always been in my blood, and I look forward to a lot more of it.
Fantastic.
Again, if I can pick up from what Alan is saying, it's interesting, Alex. You're asking about pride and reflection, and I don't know. It's a funny word, pride. Satisfaction, perhaps, if I could change the word to personal satisfaction, because that's broader for me. And whether it's the daily interaction, it's all down to communication for me. It's all being able to talk with and share, as I've already said, with regard to my enthusiasm. I hope I don't come across as being too evangelical and turn people off, but even if you can start to impart something of the enthusiasm so that it can go away, you want people to have success. You know what horticulture, the difference that environmental horticulture can make, and you just want to share it, whether that is with students, whether that is with customers, or indeed, and if I can be a bit sort of self-centered for a second, I've got my 3-year-old granddaughter living next door to me, and she's teaching me so many things. It is just fantastic. I think just having the time of the next generation. I probably tried too hard, or maybe not hard enough with my own kids, because they're doing anything but horticulture. But with my granddaughter, especially at 3, it's just wonderful. Whether it's playing with the worms or just, she'll pick something up and she's telling me to sniff it. It doesn't have a scent, but everything gets sniffed. And just looking, and you start to pick apart and marvel at what nature has done and is doing, and marveling at how much in the moment, which is what we're offering. We talked about COVID. It was getting away from all the mess that was going on and being in the moment and reminding ourselves how important that is, and what a difference we can make. And then you add in all the other things that horticulture can bring, the satisfaction, even just going out and being able to crop your garden and eat it, and just opening the curtains sometimes and seeing the blossom outside. It's just so fabulous. So I've said satisfaction. There was an immense moment of pride for me. It was receiving the Pearson Memorial Medal last year, which was terrific. There's nothing like getting an acknowledgement from your peers in industry, and that was a very, and I will use the word pride, it was a very proud moment for me and a very humbling moment, and has reinvigorated, as if I needed it, me to go out and be even more enthusiastic, if that's possible, to the students and anybody that will listen.
I think if I was to pick a couple, I'd probably use the word satisfying as well. But when I first started, I think it was a really painful operational existence. The company was a lot smaller then. It was probably like a sixth of what it is today. And things were hard. There wasn't much money around at that time. And when I look today, and we're 6 times bigger, and how smoothly the operational side run, I think that's one of the satisfaction. I think that's certainly when you look around, you see employees as well and things running well. That's a very simple thing to get satisfaction from. You look at some of the ingenuity and sort of problem solving that people demonstrated. We sort of use things like Bailey bridges to get over waterways to open up the nursery to other stock areas and things like that. The picking processes are pretty much still the same as they were 20 years ago. And so sometimes when you look at that sort of resilience and the problem solving and how well people did in that, and that's something that gives me satisfaction, I think. And on the company side, I think one of the brave things we did that I think I'm proud of is that we revisited all the old varieties and retrialed them, and to see if they came up to modern day standards. And that meant sometimes sort of obsoleting some very popular varieties. Not always a popular decision, still not a popular decision, but made for the right reason, to give the customer the best chance of success with roses and make them simpler for people. And certainly, again, with climate change, roses need to progress, and be more resilient, and no spraying, etc. So that's something that I think I'm proud of as a company as well.
I would say that me and my husband, we sometimes look at each other and kind of go, "Oh my goodness, we've done this," and we're never finished. I have to say, it is never ever finished. There is always so much to improve and change. But we do say that Kiln Farm Nursery is like our third child. So we had 2 children, and we had the first one the same year as we started the business. But the nursery is our third child, but I always say it's the naughtiest, because it rules us rather than the other way around. And that's because whatever you look at, you always want to improve it. And even this week I sat down with the lady in the office, and we wrote a massive list of things that we wanted to change, and she's going to help me implement it, because I just don't have enough time to do everything. I think one of the hardest things is that we started out doing something, just the 2 of us, and we grew every plant on site. And we potted, pruned and weeded and sold every single thing. And now, of course, we've got people that help us do it, and we wouldn't be able to do it without them. But we don't touch every plant anymore. And sometimes I've got really clean nails, like now, and it's because I haven't had my hands in the dirt. And so that's a hard thing, but it's also looking around and going, "Oh yeah, we're still here." Because at the time people said, "Oh, you don't want to do that. It's a very competitive industry," and etc., and you'll never make any money. And I have to say, for the first couple of years, we didn't really make any money, but it was just, we are still here, and we are still enjoying it, and we're still growing 80% of our plants and things on site. And hopefully we're spreading the word. And I think one of the most satisfying things is talking to customers every day and sharing that love of plants. It's exactly what Stan said. It's actually that sharing. And when people come back and go, "Look, that plant that you sold me last year, look what it looks like in my garden," and show you pictures on their phone, I do feel like immense satisfaction doing that.
So if we can just reflect a little bit on your journeys a little bit further, and you obviously all have immense satisfaction and pride in working in this industry, and now whether you meant to be there or came in at later time and now loving being part of environmental horticulture, is there a particular moment or scenario that you can think of that really stands out to you, that kind of really signifies that, yeah, horticulture was the right move for me, this is why I love it, this is something, this cements that kind of love and passion?
I think going back a little bit, touching on what Stan said earlier on, it is the people involved. And what I think is absolutely fantastic is that I've met so many people, I mean, many, many thousands of people throughout my career, because obviously working in landscaping, and I did 61 RHS show gardens at Chelsea and Hampton Court and so on, to meet all these wonderful people, and they really are magnificent. To me, that's always been the absolute passion, that we can meet each other. We might not see each other for 10 years, but we start the conversation where we left off 10 years ago, as though it was only yesterday. And throughout that whole journey, for me, the HTA have been right in the middle, because the HTA have grown with me. I've grown with the HTA and they've grown with me. And that might seem a strange thing to try and say, but the HTA have actually kept up to date, which is amazing, because there's been so much going on in the industry. It is a massive industry. I always say that horticulture is a science without boundaries, and it really is true. And landscaping, I think, is another industry that certainly has no boundaries, and which is ever changing, with new products, new materials, new techniques, always coming in, new British standards. Everything is legislation nowadays, and this is where the HTA are so strong. They do stand behind you, and if you have any questions at all, the HTA can answer them, and they're live and up to date, which I think is amazing. Well done, HTA.
I think, Alex, it's very difficult to look further back or further past COVID. Yeah, there was lots of times where I was so pleased. Sometimes, particularly our utter dependence on the weather, is you could be the most entrepreneurial, switched on, together with it person that has got this supreme business set up, and if it pours the rain, there's very little you can do. You're not getting the footfall. The fields are muddy, as we've heard from Tim, and and what do? There's just so much standing outside shaking a fist at the clouds that you can do, and it hurts. It hurts financially, and it hurts in other ways. But that apart, the range of emotions that we had from Ruth earlier about COVID. Because I don't think I've known, I absolutely 100% agree with what Ruth was saying. It's exactly the same for us. The intensity, it just accentuated and accelerated every aspect of what horticulture is and can be. Picking up the phone, you put it down, it rang, so you picked it up again. And having people crying with relief that you could do something for them, or they would be coming in, and you see, you couldn't help but be utterly humbled by, you think, I do this for a living, I'm able to help these people. And I think there was a reconnection for all of us, people in the industry and for the public, with green space, with environmental horticulture, that it was there, and I think it is growing. As I said, with the agendas that we've got on biodiversity and climate change mitigation, sustainability, and such like. But COVID really intensified that. And I think, on looking back, sorry to put in a quote, but it was the best of times and the worst of times. It really was. And that we managed to learn from it, move forward from it, and I think we've got a certain amount of traction. The HTA have been fantastic, as was said earlier, the engagement with government so that garden centres were open. It's the same in Scotland, I believe, in Wales, Northern Ireland too. he said, well, look, if we can't be doing anything else, at least, for goodness sake, let us out in the garden. And that was a saviour for so many people. I was talking to MSPs, members of Scottish Parliament up here, saying that their mental health was saved, as strong as that, by being able to get outside and be in their garden. So let's not underestimate where we are with things. We need to build on that, and the HTA have been terrific at being able to maintain that level of engagement with all the devolved powers, and that's been terrific. And even just on the simple basic, if I just finish on this one thing, the WhatsApp groups during COVID, what a little lifesaver that was. I'm not the only one. You look at it, picking it up and seeing, and just that, it might be 2 or 3 sentences. What's somebody doing about this? How are you managing your queues? Absolutely fantastic. And again, set up with HTA. So it was terrific to be able to have that facility there.
I think for me, picking up a bit on that as well, is that I look at it through a company lens, but probably brings in all those aspects that the key thing for me, and I'm not a social media, that I'll probably vouch for that where I work, that I am not a social media guru, but when you do actually look at social media and you look at the happiness, we look at it through a lens of roses, but you look at the happiness that people get. You're not forcing them to be happy. You're not, what you're doing is genuinely making them happy. They're getting enjoyment. They're getting the health benefit. It's getting them outside. So that to me is a really simple way of knowing that we're doing the right thing. We can run our surveys and we know, I think we've probably 99% customer satisfaction is really high. But when you see people naturally preaching about your product and enjoying what you do, I don't think there's anything better than that.
Again, I think there's a lot being said. We're in the, it's called Business Improvement Scheme, which previously was the Retail Business Improvement Scheme, I believe. And what Stan said about WhatsApp groups, oh my goodness, these people, we've been in the, you pay a subscription, and then you are part of this group in your area of other people in garden centres, and usually we're independents, and we literally bounce ideas off each other at all times. But these people have actually become really good friends, because we've all been meeting up every few months for the last 10 years now. And but yes, even yesterday I was talking about how I wanted to set up some core values for the nursery, so that when we had new people start, that they really understood our ethics. And so I ping it on the WhatsApp, and within about 5 minutes I get a couple of people answering with a copy of what they've got as their core values. You can't beat that, and I don't think there are many industries where that happens in that way, because we're not competitors. We don't consider ourselves competitors, but we're all in the same area and we're all working with the same product, and yet actually we're there patting each other on the back. Somebody recently was completely flooded, and we all offered to go and help shovel the mud out of his polytunnels. Just things like that. That makes me feel really happy.
Well, very nicely, that kind of led me into my next question, which you've kind of answered a little bit between you, but I am going to just ask you, how does being a member of the HTA resonate with you personally? What does it mean to you as personally and as a business? And I know we have touched on this, but if there's anything else anyone wants to add on that would be great.
Yeah, and we've got, I asked this question to a few people internally rather than me answering it. And the one thing that came back when we talk about young people in horticulture, our company, I think 10 years ago, would have really been, it was very inward looking. We didn't particularly look out. We didn't particularly use the HTA, if I'm honest. And now when we talk about the YPHA and we talk to the younger people, the response is genuinely phenomenal. I won't read you out everything that they said, but the statements, some of them, we receive a huge benefit from our HTA. I wouldn't be without it. It's absolutely essential for my role. And these are genuine, they're not forced statements, and it really does open people's eyes. It gives a sense of camaraderie, of team. And I think that's so important to certainly the younger generations coming through for me. So I think the HTA is doing a great job on helping us on that side.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, I think following on from that, Tim, I think absolutely all of the above. Helping you get your perspective The outward-looking element, I completely agree. It's very easy to sort of not hunker down, but just be looking at your own focus, and you start missing what is going on in the bigger picture. And there's a lot going on. And I think that engagement with governments is essential, and the direct business helps is terrific. The help that the HTA can bring and give, and just getting us, talking to each other as well, which is, as we've heard from Ruth, is invaluable.
So I have one final question to you all, and that is, what would you like to see from environmental horticulture in the next 25 years? What do you want the HTA, us as an industry, and everyone involved to push for, to encourage, to help come to be in the next 25 years of horticulture?
For the last 10 years, I've been working as an expert witness, and I deal with between 80 and 100 cases a year. This is a massive, massive problem in the landscape industry. It's builders as well as landscapers and people who shouldn't be anywhere near building gardens. And that's a tremendous amount of waste. This is the biggest, I think, environmental issue as far as I'm concerned, is the amount of material, topsoil, trees, plants, paving, walling, that has to be condemned because it's been so badly put together, it's dangerous. And if we could only find a way as an industry, and I think the HTA could definitely take the lead here, and I know it's something which the APL have been looking at for a long time, is to, I believe, as a gardening country, we are the only gardening country in the world that doesn't have licensed operatives. Everybody else, you can't even go and buy landscape materials unless you've got a license to buy them. And I think the way that that could be dealt with is not by having a state police going around and saying, oh, can I see your license? Is the fact that you can't get insurance unless you are licensed. And if you can't get insurance, I believe that the public would understand and not just rush out and hand tens of thousands of pounds over to people who really have no idea what they're doing. And if you could see some of the cases I have to deal with, you have to understand completely.
I suppose what I'm going to say is it's quite broad, as specific as Alan's. I have mentioned several times the different agendas. I think the biodiversity agenda is what we do, and I think that to an extent will look after itself. I'd really like to see the HTA get involved in the health and well-being agenda, how we engage as in retail and in the community and in other ways, and how we engage with the health authorities to actually take us serious about with regards to social prescribing and green prescribing within social prescribing. So that's a challenge. And I think on the production side, we have biosecurity issues, which I think is an opportunity in the medium to long term. And alongside that, adoption of more renewables along the sustainability side. Now that technology is becoming more affordable, but it would be really interesting if the HTA could talk to government about incentivizing and actually put us on the same platform, perhaps, as other land-based industries, in particular farming. So we're not a subset of farming. Environmental horticulture is very much on its own right, and we need to have that recognition so that we can get help, and maybe just the odd leg up when we need it.
I'd probably pick up, it sounds a bit of an odd answer, but it links in all of those areas really for me, and that's helping people be more comfortable with charging more and paying more. I feel that we often hugely undervalue what we do in terms of the end price. And, you know, I know the old analogy, we go to Costa and we have a £6 cup of coffee and we bulk at a £3, £4 plant. You know, and those plants will be around 10 years plus. They're going to give you a lot of happiness, you know, so maybe 10 years of happiness for £35, £30, whatever it be. For us as a nursery, a typical real simple example, neonics, we don't use neonics. We now use IPM out in the field and in glass. That's 25 times more expensive than putting a small amount of spray of neonic in and going and doing the job. So that has to be paid for, and we have to make the customer happy with that, the buyer happy with that, and I think that's something we could all, contribute to.
I would like to be able to pay my staff more. And really, it's embarrassing when I have youngsters come for a Saturday job and they turn it down, and I ring them up for feedback and they say, well, I can get more at Tesco's. And that I find horrifying, because at Tesco's, a youngster gets paid an adult wage. And with us, they have to have lots of knowledge. Even when they start, we have somebody with them because they're our front line. And but we can't, in the circumstance of our pay structure, we have to pay them a lower amount than they would receive at Tesco's, even though they have higher skills. And it's the same within my whole business. Sorry, I should say our business. But everybody there is multi-skilled. They can pretty much do every job on there, and they have so much knowledge. And they're prepared to give people advice for free, and yet really we're only paying them a very basic wage. So I completely agree with Tim. I'd really like to be able to do that. It was quite a shock this year because the minimum wage has gone up by £1, and so we had to put everybody up. But what's actually going to happen, I think, is it's that hierarchy, even though we don't have much of a hierarchy, is going to be squeezed.
Yep.
And it just doesn't seem fair. I think that's going to come with people will respect high-level horticulturalists. So why don't they respect the people who are working in the garden centres, as gardeners and landscapers? I think that's a dreadful shame, and that's something we should work for to help elevate that in the minds of the public.
Well, thank you very much to my special guests today, Alan, Stan, Tim and Ruth. I really enjoyed having that conversation with you, and thank you very much for your insight into this subject. This has been episode 17 of Hort-Talk, an HGA podcast celebrating 125 years of UK environmental horticulture. We look forward to the next episode. Stay safe, everyone. Take care.